Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. They're all big, but we've got one of the great community leaders with us today talking about all the great things that are going on in our community in a time of crisis. Erica Joseph from the Community Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you, Greg.
So I'm so impressed with what you all are doing over at the Community Foundation in terms of the pandemic, in terms of trying to help the community. Tell me about this emergency fund that you all have, and what is its purpose and what has it done?
So this fund was established very early in sort of the local impact of the coronavirus. Late March, as we were closing up our office, we started having dialogue among our staff, among our board, and with potential funding partners about what could and should we do to prepare ourselves to respond to local needs that were certainly to come, but not necessarily truly understood yet. And so we established the fund. It had been based on something that we did in the past, which was more, localized disaster relief for things like Hurricane Sandy and others. But we used that same sort of model. And we created the fund. We put up the initial contribution because we knew that we wanted to not just be in the position of asking for support, but saying, this is important. We're committing $35,000 to start, and we'd like, the community to join us in this effort. And so to date, we've raised just close to $350,000.
That's amazing.
It's been truly from the leadership of partners like the Richard A. Henson Foundation, who stepped up with $125,000, to individual donors, some of which we may have not even personally met before, who saw, the article in the paper and other communications that were sending in checks for $25. And so we started basically the week after we established the fund. We opened up a grant application that is available every week for nonprofits to apply to. It's on our website, cfes.org/COVID-19.
And you got a great website. It's very user-friendly.
Thank you.
It's really easy to get in and see what you all do. But go ahead.
Thank you. And so we started doing weekly review because we knew that the needs were immediate. We knew that they were changing. We knew that we couldn't sit on those funds and try to figure out everything. We really needed to start responding to the needs that were being presented. And we've distributed about $120,000 so far over the past 3 months. And I think one of the wonderful things for the donors that partnered with us is that all of those grants are on that website as well. So every week, as soon as we do distributions, we post that as an opportunity for some additional transparency and for our partner funders and donors to feel like they know what their impact is in the community with those contributions.
What are the needs? What is the money being used for?
So it's been, the most common thing up front was vulnerable populations. So helping communities meet the needs of kids who are home from school really unexpectedly and very quickly. So food for them, medical support, prescriptions and things for vulnerable adults, senior citizens, food delivery. But also we weren't surprised, but we immediately saw a need for technology to help with telehealth so that local nonprofits that work with mental health and counseling could still continue to meet the needs of clients who would typically come into their offices. We've also seen PPE needs both for first responders, but also for nonprofits who are doing critical service delivery. So if you're delivering meals or you're having to meet those needs, you need to be protected and protect your clients. We've also seen a transition as nonprofits begin to go back to work to try to prepare their space and their staff and volunteers for safety and impact in light of the CDC regulations. But it's been a sort of learning process as we go. And it's also been an opportunity for us to listen to our nonprofit partners about what they really see as the most compelling needs. Many of them shut down just like we did in terms of their offices being closed. But that didn't mean that the need of their communities and clients had gone away. So they were trying to figure out how to do what they do with those very real and limiting factors on their movements and activities.
And you've had some local businesses really step up.
Absolutely. I mentioned Richard A. Henson Foundation. We also had the Purdue Foundation, First Shore Federal, Care First, a number of others who had said, this is wonderful. We know there are going to be needs. And I think they, and we did this in collaboration with United Way as well, because they also have emergency response support. And I think that a lot of our local business partners felt like it was an opportunity for us to help them identify the need, because so much of their business was being impacted as well, that to try to respond at an individual level could be very challenging. And so it gave us an opportunity to help to, meet a need both for the community, but also for the local businesses who are always at the forefront of helping to meet community needs, but were being taxed in new ways themselves.
It must make you feel really empowered because, these businesses, they want to help in a crisis. They don't know what to do with their money, and they lean on you. They give it to you because they know what you're going to do with it.
And I think that that's part of a long history that we've had of really working in partnership and collaboration with these organizations. A number of them have their own funds with the Community Foundation, for example. I'll pick on Marty and First Shore Federal. They have a huge community footprint in terms of charitable giving. And one of the ways they do that is through a donor advised fund at the Community Foundation, because it helps them, be able to keep that, at the forefront of their focus, and also to make sure that those resources are available when a need presents itself. And so when things like this happen, or when something like this that has never happened happens, we're able to sort of, reach out to those businesses and donors that we have these long established relationships with, and go through that process with them of what we're doing, get their input, get their feedback about, what's important to them, what concerns they have. And I think that they know that transparency will be part of, our activity the whole way through, and hopefully gives them that extra confidence in making those gifts to us.
When you're a kid and you're playing the board game Monopoly and you get to that corner square and you've got to give money to Community Chest, it's always really aggravating and you roll your eyes. But as you become an adult, you realize that the Community Foundation is our Community Chest. And it's important. It's actually really doing something that benefits all of us.
Yeah, and growing up, you volunteer. That's often sort of how you teach those kinds of values to kids, is that, you give of your time. And I think as you recognize within a community like ours that so much of what makes our community a wonderful place to be, so much of what is done to address the issues and challenges that we may still have, are often led by nonprofits. And they're always at the table alongside government, alongside private sector business. And they really can help to focus on things that if nonprofits weren't here, and if people weren't sort of creating the kind of community they wanted to live by writing checks and giving of their time, some of those issues might fall by the wayside just because they may not necessarily be as embraced by some of those other sectors. And so nonprofits are integral in helping to create a community that is a place people want to live.
Yeah, and I've always said this, and I really need to do it as a story. In terms of our community, the per person number of nonprofits. Growing up here, there were so many nonprofits helping so many different needs. And when I went to work in Annapolis at the paper there were basically like four. There was the hospital, Salvation Army, the Boys and Girls Club, and there was another one. But in a town like Annapolis, there weren't a lot of nonprofits. But we're here, there's so many from Shore Up. There's
Yep.
all different needs being addressed by these nonprofits, and they're essential.
Well, and I have a feeling that many people probably don't even necessarily think about, services and programs that they're part of as, being these charitable organizations, but they really do cross the spectrum. You have the zoo, the food bank, the Humane Society, MAC Incorporated, all these different health and human services entities, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. All of these are businesses that operate in our community with a mission to enhance the community in some way, shape, or form. And the Eastern Shore is always, a little bit, we're unique across the state. We get asked when we're part of, statewide activities. Well, how do you all do that over there?
Right.
How do you work together like that? And, how do you have this tremendously generous community when you're, not very populous and you are mostly rural and you don't have a ton of huge corporate entities here. And the reality is that we do those things because I think as a community, we know that we have to take care of each other and we have to work together and we have to collaborate and we have to, complement and fill a niche that maybe someone else isn't able to do. And those things really make us overall stronger and help us tackle some of the challenges that, other communities may struggle with a little more.
Community Foundation was created by some real visionary people 35, 36 years ago.
Yep. They were sort of led by the Greater Salisbury Committee, Bob Cook, Mr. Henson. There were just a long list of what became the founders, Frank Morris, who became the founders of the Community Foundation's first board. And the concept was really not to be something that was another charity to sort of take money, but something that would be created to allow people to create those long-term legacies, those endowment funds that would help sustain nonprofit partners. We have funds that are specifically set up for just one agency, all the way to funds that we hold that every year we invite applications for proposals to help us figure out how to best distribute those grants. And so those leaders built on a model that exists throughout the country and now throughout the world to focus a community's sort of collective philanthropy on a geographic area. And so we serve Somerset, Wicomico, and Worcester County, and we have funds, over 700 different endowment funds. Scholarships are a huge part of our impact every year. We distribute about $400,000 in scholarships to local students. We have really been able to look at that vision that those leaders had and find ways to engage donors in both, things that an individual might say, this is important to me and I want to create a fund to do this, or a group of people, like a graduating class who's celebrating a reunion. They all pool their money together and create a fund. So we really work hard to make philanthropy accessible, something that is not about how much money you have, but more about how much generosity you have and the kinds of things that you want to make an impact on in your life.
I've told this story before, but when I was a young reporter, I remember interviewing Lucy Moeller, the first executive director, and Mr. Cook, Bob Cook, and learning about this and actually cynically saying, this is never going to work. People are always going to direct contribute. No one's going to give you money and trust you to do anything with it. Good luck with this thing. It's not going to work. And here it is all these years later. And you've given out, what, $90 million?
Yeah, so last year it was really interesting. We were founded in 1984 and we had distributed $84 million in that time. And so we distribute about $6 million a year. So I know we'll be closing in on that 90. But it's not really about that big number, because I think, when you go back to the founding of the foundation, the first grants were like $1,000 a piece to 2 local nonprofits. That was it. That was the first year of, impact of the Community Foundation. And I think that building on the trust that the community had in those founding leaders, was what, and the other thing is that you have to remember that in the case of Mr. Henson, he said, I believe in this, I'm giving $1 million. And so for other people in the community, I think that was, he had his own, philanthropic objectives, but
his own foundation.
He said, I believe in this. Our community needs this. And I think that kind of leadership really sort of sets the tone and helps other people go, well, if he's in, I'm in. And I'll pick on Marty again. He's on our investment committee.
Marty Neat from First Shore Federal.
He's on our investment committee and has been on the board and chairman of the foundation in our history. And he always likes to look at sort of our, upward trend of our growth in the foundation over its inception and go, this just might work. So he's your counter argument. But it has been both the generosity of the community, but also the diligence of our investment strategy, which, is not necessarily something that you talk about all the time.
Right, people don't even think about that you have to do something with this money to make money.
Exactly, and so that is a real focus of our board and our investment committee and our financial team to make sure that not only every gift that is given to us is spent in the way it's supposed to be spent, but also that it's invested in a way that not only protects it now, but really focuses on growing it for the future. Because the goal of the foundation is, for good, forever, not just for this year, not just for next year. We really are looking long term because this organization should last and exist for future needs beyond what any of us can, envision right now.
Right. And early on, all the doubts that I had were washed away with the Kresge donation. $1 million, which with inflation would probably be about $4 million now. That was a huge amount of money for some group to be impressed by our community enough that they would give us that much money.
Yeah, that was a tremendous campaign. I actually joined the foundation right at the end of that. And it brought not only that outside attention and focus to the organization, but it also brought in 19 nonprofit partners, which I think was, a real transformational moment in our own history, because it really aligned us as a partner in helping organizations build and create and manage endowments of their own that would then support them. And the growth in those funds, those 19 endowment funds, we're closing in on the period of time where we're going to have given out more money than those funds initially were, which is kind of the story of endowment. People ask, why would you do that? Why would you give money and then only spend a portion of it every year? Well, it's back to the long-term focus. We really are focused on now, but looking toward the future. So every year that fund is going to give out a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and over time exceed what the initial gift was.
And I saw that 2008 through 10, you all were able to sustain what you were doing even in the middle of an economic catastrophe.
Yeah, and so we're being challenged. Of course, the current state of affairs creates that uncertainty, and it's something that we do focus on. But our team has, we focus on trying to prepare ourselves for what those scenarios are, and we know that in times of crisis, organizations depend on that charitable giving from us even more, as individuals and businesses may be challenged in being able to distribute. And so that financial and investment approach that we use has been tested before. We learn, we stay true to our focus, and I think that that's been a huge testament to our success since our founding.
I can see where grant making would be a difficult process, but one of the feedback things I hear all the time is that when your board members go out and they sort of interview the nonprofits to see whether they're worthy of the money or things are done correctly, that there's a collaborative process. It's not like a rigid inspection. The nonprofit gets a chance to really brag about what they do and tell their story, and then it's a very positive experience in trying to get this money.
And it's designed that way on purpose. You know, our goal, we're members of this community, and many of us support these charities ourselves in different ways, maybe as volunteers or donors. And so what we try to do is use that site visit as an opportunity to educate ourselves. You know, we love to send people who don't know this nonprofit to that visit because it gives them a chance to broaden their understanding of community needs, maybe see something a little differently than they have. And it also sort of starts to, over time, create this new cadre of advocates for that cause or that organization. And so, you know, we expect that every one of our board members at some point in their tenure, in their first term, serve on a grant committee because, you know, building the endowments, investing the, you know, portfolio, all of that is critical to our mission and a huge part of our focus. But going out and seeing kids that are part of a program that we are going to, you know, support, or being able to talk with, you know, a senior citizen who's been getting Meals on Wheels that we in part are helping to support, that's what makes those other aspects of the foundation's work meaningful. Accumulating those assets and distributing those grants only matters if you can see what the impact is on an individual person in the community.
As someone who's into communications, I just have to say I love your little newsletter. It does a great job of explaining the programs that you fund. It recognizes the people that support you and do the volunteer work. It acknowledges the people who have given money. It's a great read, and it's just a great sort of a picture of the community. Very positive picture, I think.
I appreciate that feedback, and I'll make sure to convey it to Victoria, who is in charge of all of our marketing. And, you know, one of the things that and I'm sure, you know, in organizations that you're part of, you're constantly trying to figure out, you know, do we continue to do this in hard copy? You know, everything is digital now, and, you know, what should we, you know, focus our effort on? How do you communicate your message? And for us, just knowing that, you know, every time we do that newsletter, we're able to share a few stories. And they really, you know, are just like the tip of the iceberg, but it gives people a real example of, you know, saying, oh, this person created an endowment sounds impressive, but it may not sound accessible. But if we can show their picture and a little story about why they did it and how they did it, and the fact that, you know, surprisingly, it's very easy to do, and on our team is designed to help facilitate that for you, inspires people. And we get calls that'll say, you know, I saw this in your newsletter, or I saw a commercial that you did, and I want to do what they did. It really does make it not just something that, you know, Bill Gates does, but, you know, philanthropy is something that, you know, Greg Bassett does. And I think bringing that to those types of communications is important so that people feel like they're part of something bigger.
Yeah, and I think it challenges people. It gets them to think about things like what the possibilities would be.
Yeah.
You know, and I look at what other people are doing and go, why don't I do something like that? I mean, it really, you know, elicits that sort of response. And also, I think there's a competitive thing that goes on where you see your friends and neighbors contributing, and you're thinking you want to do the same thing.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the foundation is that, you know, we certainly help people do, like, you know, tax deductible in the current year gifts. And just as a reminder, in the CARES Act that was passed earlier this year, everybody, whether you itemize or not, can deduct $300 in cash contributions, which is a nice, you know, because that was taken out if you weren't able to itemize. But a lot of people approach the foundation because as they get older, or as they, you know, receive, maybe an inheritance, or, you know, they are looking for creative ways to do something good. And the Community Foundation can help them facilitate what might be, you know, sort of a unique scenario for them. And that's been a creative way that we can help complement. You know, a nonprofit might know that they have a donor who wants to do something that they're not really experienced with. And so we can partner together to help them do that.
You've really developed as a community leader, and in the 5 or 6 years that I've watched you do this job, and it's the kind of job you can do it any way you want to do it. But you've been very aggressive in terms of the way you've led the community foundation.
Well, I think part of our team approach and our board's approach is that the community foundation should be visible. We should be working alongside the organizations that we support. We should be celebrating and inspiring people to give to charity, to be philanthropic. We should be out there talking about our mission. And I think that it's an opportunity to sort of take something that's maybe not a simple topic, because people often say, well, what does the community foundation do? And the reality is that there's a lot of aspects to that. But being available, being accessible, putting opportunities like Giving Tuesday in front of the community to motivate giving, and also talking about the needs that the community has, I think has sort of elevated, hopefully, our mission and our brand in the community, so that people feel like even if they don't know exactly how they might work with us, they want to learn a little bit more.
I'm glad you mentioned Giving Tuesday, because I'm so impressed with that too, because I'm aware of it, but I don't feel like I'm being hounded about it. And there's a subtle line there.
Well, and the reason that we started that was because nonprofit partners asked us, could we help them? Maybe they didn't have online giving on their website, or they weren't sure how to get the message out. And so we looked at, this is an opportunity to do some capacity building that would help the entire region, that would help nonprofits, whether you're big or small. And we feel like every year it's an opportunity for us to amplify the message of the impact of charitable giving, both to the donor and to the causes that make our community a really wonderful place to be, and a community that tries to tackle its challenges. Hopefully, it's the relationships that we've built up, as an organization, and certainly in the time that I've been there, I've been able to work in almost every aspect of our foundation's work, and it's been able to connect me with people in the community that I call friends. They're great colleagues, and if I need to lean on them, I feel like I can pick up the phone, and I hope that they feel the same. We have, over the past few years, been really diligent about reaching out to our business partners. We've got great friends in the community that help us do that at our chambers of commerce, at GSC. And it has, I think, really forged some strong partnerships that now when we are on those community calls, trying to respond to the current situation related to coronavirus or other things, my hope is that the Community Foundation is viewed as one of the local leaders in not necessarily having all the answers, but certainly willing to step up, to learn, to participate, to be part of that, and then to do the follow-up work that's needed. And so hopefully that's been, part of what's created those strong relationships.
Okay, wrap me up. If I want to give to the emergency fund, what do I do?
So you go to our website, cfes.org, you click Donate Now, and that's one of the options. You can also give to any fund at the Community Foundation, but certainly at this point that is one of our focus areas. And then beyond that, because we know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, we will at some point not only be focused on COVID impact and how we're responding. Just remember that the Community Foundation's there. We are there to help facilitate charitable giving, whether it's to us or whether it's to help meet some other goal that you have in your life for yourself or your family or your business, and just to keep us in mind if we can help.
She's Erica Joseph. She's CEO and president of the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore, and we're thrilled that she was here today doing great work in our community. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper. Another edition of One-on-One right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.